flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Mrs. Angelique Everett.
Here.
Mrs. Gadsden.
Here.
Mrs. Galbo.
Excused.
Mr. Garnett.
Here.
Mr. Munoz.
Here.
Ms. Patchen.
Here.
Mr. White.
Here.
Mr. Zoff.
Excused.
Mrs. Thompson.
Here. Dr. Walkley, will you review the fire exits, please?
The fire exits are directly behind the audience.
And would you like to introduce our workshop?
Yes. Actually, I'm going to have people joining me for the workshop. And I'd like to start with Mrs. Kellogg, who has an announcement about some very good news about a donation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Surely. Well, I wanted to thank the Beacon Arts and Education Foundation. Thank you, Heather. I see her in the audience. They recently donated $1,000 to each of the elementary schools. $500 to go to the music fund for musical instruments, and $500 to go for art supplies for each of the elementary schools. So that's over and above what they've been doing for us. Many of you saw the Calico Ball and how wonderful that was, and the other wonderful things that are going on. We had the Macbeth play at the high school, and they had donated even more musical instruments at the middle school. So we can't thank the Beacon Arts and Ed Foundation enough for all of their continued support of our district. So thank you so much.
Okay, this evening I want to talk a little bit about change. I'm going to start with some quotes. Leo Tolstoy: "Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself." Be the change you wish to see in the world. Gandhi. Everybody wants better. No one wants change. Jonathan Fields. We know that change is hard. When people are confronted with change, we're often not prepared for it. Because change, if I give you a choice, do you want to change or stay the same? The vast majority of people will say, I'd like to stay the same. Sometimes change is necessary to get the things that we want. In education, we're in the perfect storm. It's not the school that you knew when you went to school. Everything about school is changing. And 2 years ago, when I was here working with the staff, this was the first slide that I addressed with them at a conference day, is that we are saying goodbye to the old way of doing things. There are new ways of doing things in school. There's new accountability. The state is holding us to different laws, different regulations, and even things that have changed maybe twice in the last 10 years are changing again. So we're in the midst of this perfect storm where everything around us is new and different and changing. And as you may know, if you've been listening or reading the paper, the time that the state is giving us to change is a very, very small window. Really, from an educational point of view, not enough time to really plan as thoroughly as we would like. So the world is different around us. Often the state says, well, look, we just have 4 goals. There's only 4 goals, and again, some of you have seen this slide. The 4 goals from the state in the Regents Reform agenda is to have great leaders. It says leaders and leaders. I'm sorry, should say great leaders and teachers. Data systems for improvement, common core learning standards, and continuous improvement of schools. There's just 4 goals. How hard could it be? Well, when you begin to take a look at those 4 goals, you begin to see all of the different systems that are under those particular titles. And actually, there's more than I could fit on the page here. And one of the most important things that I think about and that we think about in this district is sort of the curved line around the Regents Reform agenda. supports for students, teachers, and administrators. There's a lot of change around us, and the sand is constantly shifting. And just when we think that we, for example, got the APPR, which is just one little piece of all of this change, when we got that, we felt like, oh, maybe we understand this now. It has changed again. So a lot of change. The question of accountability. The state is holding our feet to the fire. The state wants and expects change. We are held to targets, and those targets move each year, and they move higher and higher. That is the design of the state accountability system. Whether we like it or not, we are judged. The quality of our school and our school district is judged by those accountability measures. And there are sanctions put upon districts that do not meet the quality measures that the state has set. Not only do we have to improve, we have to improve enough. And we have to meet certain other measures for our accountability, or we are held on the focus list. And as you know, our high school continues to be on the focus list, as does our district. And so those accountability measures are serious. And if you've looked at the new Enactment Act, the new requirements under the state, the fire is getting hotter and hotter on our feet. We only need to look to Poughkeepsie to see an outcome which I would like to avoid. I think probably most districts would like to avoid. And that is moving a school into a receivership. A receivership is when the state may first appoint the superintendent as the receiver, and they give them special powers beyond what they already have, or they may just appoint somebody outside of a school district, and maybe not even an educator, who make very serious decisions about the school district and the future of the school district. Ultimately, the final outcome, if there is not improvement from the receivership, the school can become a charter school rather than a public school. So there are very serious sanctions held against us for accountability. The question of transfers people have asked. I've thought a lot about the transfers. I listen to what people have to say. People who this time were chosen for their skill sets and knowledge that fits in a different spot right now. They're chosen for their leadership capability. They were chosen because they can transcend grade levels. And they were chosen because they are valued. And we are asking them to help us out. The whole district needs to change. The whole K-12 system needs to change. And we need people who are influential to help us change, who have knowledge that is needed in other areas of the organization. There will be a time when others will be asked to step up. That's no different than in business and industry. In business and industry, people all the time are asked to step up and do something a little bit different to help out the organization. All of these people are chosen because they love kids. They love students, and they have proven themselves to be strong educators. Coaches. Some of the teachers are coaches, and there's a question about, well, how can they coach? Well, first, our principals in the schools are ready to assist and support our sports programming. They always have. This past year, we had 2 head coaches. The head basketball coach and a soccer coach were at the elementary schools. They are the latest to let out. We have Mrs. Tompkins, who works with Mr. Nemechek, I saw him earlier, who really is the master scheduler of practices and working with our coaches. And she has accommodated, as has the principals, as has the district, as has the board, their schedules so that they are not missing practice, so they are attending the games, and they are giving the support that is needed in the sports programming. So what else is changing? Well, a lot is changing around the district. Recently I met with the administrators and I asked them to share 3 things that are changing in their school. So I'd like to share those 3 things with you. First, at South Avenue, there has been a revitalization of the PBIS programming this year, and there will continue that revitalization will continue. There's was 1 day of training, and this summer there are other days of training, and then a new rollout again to the full staff when we start school again. At South Avenue, they've been able to think differently about their staff. The staff didn't change, but the way that they are using time is a little bit different. And they found by changing time just a little bit that they were able to support more students and give more student support. And as a result, school spirit has increased. At JVF, more staff is involved in after-school activities, which Mr. Wright felt is resulting in an increase of school spirit. There is increased guided reading by changing the morning schedule so that students are engaged in reading early in the morning when they come in. And there are also, as all of our schools, from elementary to high school, there is a revitalization of PBIS. At Glenham, the revitalization of PBIS. Classroom practices are changing as a result of the embedded staff development through some consultants that we were using this particular year. And the leadership capacity of all teachers is beginning to change with some different ways that Mrs. Condello is asking teachers to play different roles in the RTI process. At Sargent, and there he is, Mr. Archer is here this evening. He mentioned the reading success of 4th graders through the implementation of a pilot program we started this year called Reading Plus. It is a web-based program that increases reading fluency. And that's important because if you don't have fluency, you don't have comprehension. And so it is ultimately it's a comprehension program. There's been an increase in school spirit with a Student of the Month wall, which was part of their PBIS program. And they also have been implementing classroom strategies through explicit direct instruction, working with some of our consultants. At the middle school, one of the big changes is the school breakfast program, which is called the Grab and Go Breakfast. And at the beginning of the year, about 25 students were taking advantage of the school breakfast program. With the Grab and Go program, which is a bagged breakfast, the kids can come in, get the breakfast, they can take it to their classroom. We were serving, by the end of the year, over 100 students for breakfast. This year at the middle school, they began an advanced math program at 6th grade to strengthen the overall math program and to help fill the gap with the difference between the Common Core and going from Common Core to Regents. They are also experiencing a revitalization of the PBIS. At the high school, through special programming that was started this year, more students are showing academic success who entered as struggling students. There is an increase in out-of-school suspensions this year, and we have, over the last several years, seen an increase in the graduation rate. Across the district, we have been implementing the energy efficiency program, and we're seeing an increase in the efficiency. If you've been around to the schools in the evening, you may have noticed how much brighter it is outside. That's part of our efficiency program because of the type of lighting, but also part of our safety measures. We also increased the number of cameras in particularly high incident areas, which has also helped with safety. We have increased in the production of clean data. Our teachers are all required to maintain data. And it is important because they are entering data into a system and then that data is sent to the state. So having clean data or data that is accurate is very important. And this year we implemented a turnkey program where teachers were teaching teachers about how to take care of their data, how to enter their data, etc. And we're very pleased to say that the amount of accurate data has increased exponentially. We also saw an increase this year in grant funding for new cafeteria equipment in some of the schools. And so that was very exciting as well. A third topic that's been of interest is about human resources. I'm going to ask Mrs. Porteroni to join me.
Thank you. During the budget process, we talked a lot about change, but a little bit about the human resources area in Beacon, so I wanted to just elaborate a little bit here. Beacon had an HR position many years ago. That was before me, about 20 years ago. We have had audits. We had an audit in 2010. We had a human resources consultant come in to try to give us an idea of how we should structure our human resources department. We also get internal audit reports every year, and both of those reports recommended that we hire a human resource director. In 2014, we did budget for the human resources director, but it was not filled. We were still evaluating what type of person and what credentials we needed to put in. And then we again budgeted in the 2015-16 school year for a human resources director. So that's currently in the budget that was passed in May. You want me to speak to that, or you?
Sure.
Okay.
There's been a question of budget cuts. There were no cuts to the arts. I think at the time, in the half-year mark of this year, we had an art teacher who did retire. And somehow a rumor was started that that particular teacher was not replaced, and that is not true. That was replaced by a 1.0 FTE art teacher who is in a probationary position, and they will be back again in September to fulfill that probationary position. There's a question about sharing of teachers between two schools and thinking that that is a budgetary decision. Well, ultimately, I suppose it is a budgetary decision, but the amount of FTE that a school received is based upon the number of sections needed or the number of classes that are needed within a school. So if our largest elementary school needs a 1.0 FTE, then some of our smaller schools don't need a full FTE of some of the arts as well as library. So we share based upon the number of sections that are needed.
So back to human resources.
Yes.
So there are two different pathways to set up for a director of human resources, and that was probably the decision that we've been going back and forth with from the prior year to this year. So there's two ways to do that. A certified staff person is through education law. It's a certified administrator, and they have comparative salaries by the county or BOCES area. The other way is a civil service staff position, and that's dictated by civil service law. It's a competitive position, and the salary ranges from there as well. So we have districts here in Dutchess County that actually do two different ways. So to kind of go over the reasons to choose the education law at this time, because that is the focus of what we had put in the budget process this year. There were new laws enacted around personnel issues in general, and we felt that they needed a deep and thorough knowledge of the education laws and regulations, a little bit more thorough than a civil service position would warrant. We're always concerned about potential libel exposure, which is great in a lot of different areas. There's changes in the certification laws that require research of those changing laws. And the Annual Professional Performance Review, or the APPR, as it's commonly known, has developed, again, new laws that we're kind of struggling through, and the compliance challenges for tenure and 3028 process. So just to give you an idea of salary comparisons, we just use this BOCES, so school districts that are covered into this BOCES. And we use, instead of names, we use District A, B, and C. So this is a personnel director, assistant superintendent for human resources, and a director of human resources. So you can see the titles kind of vary within the districts. These are certified staff people, and then what their salaries are. So the regional average for an ed law human resources director, and then a range from a 1 to 2 years experience is at the bottom. So we also wanted to give you a salary comparison for in this area also under civil service law. So we do have 2 districts that have a civil service personnel manager or director of human resources. Again, the titles kind of vary between the 2 districts. And we have a regional average value on a civil service position, and then a regional civil service position. Both of those positions, as you notice, have 10 years experience in each. So that's a title that has been around in these districts for a while, and that's been working for them. I didn't mean to end so quickly.
So, are there any questions from the board at this time?
I just have a couple. Barb. You were talking about changing, you highlighted a lot of the positive change that has happened per building. So that was from the 14-15 school year, I'm assuming? With the PBIS, you outlined each one. So what other change are you hoping will come about in 15-16 school year with the transfers that wasn't highlighted in 14-15?
Well, what I'm hoping is that we're going to be looking at the K-12 system. And in the K-12 system, there are improvements that are needed because our graduation rate teeters at 80%, and we need to maintain the 80%. And we're not quite there yet, but we haven't had our August graduation yet. And in addition, and we cannot say that the graduation at the high school is a reflection of just the high school. That's a reflection of the whole system. The ability to graduate begins right at kindergarten. As we know from the studies that were done this year through the Dropout Forum, attendance is one of the biggest indicators of whether a student is going to graduate or not. And we have students at the kindergarten level who we are working on with attendance. So it's a K-12 problem. It's not just a high school problem. And we also know that we still need to raise our student performance. And so we're also looking at the articulation of curriculum in a K-12 fashion. And we are looking at the transfer of information so that at each grade level, teachers are beginning to better understand the requirements that come before them and the requirements that come after them.
So for the science, I know that one transfer with a science teacher, and I don't know if this is accurate information, that she had a 100% pass rate. It seems like the system for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade for the living environment seemed to be working because the curriculum in 7th grade and 9th grade are relatively the same, and then 8th grade is a physical science, and there was change. So it seems like it's not just her doing her job in 9th grade, but it was the whole 7th, 8th, and 9th grade that led up to the success of the students. Is it true that there was a 100% pass rate, and if so, why?
So what you have to
Adjust
look
that.
at, Anthony, is our overall passing rate for science. It's great when a teacher has a 100% passing rate. My goal is that every teacher has a 100% passing rate, and therefore the transmission of those skills and knowledge needs to happen across the organization.
And for the HR position, you said it was regional. What is it? The Hudson Valley region? Is it so? It's Orange, Dutchess.
It was Dutch. We used Dutchess BOCES.
Just Dutchess
Yeah.
BOCES?
Mm-hmm.
I got a question.
Yes.
yeah, I misunderstood you, but we are focused school because of the state test, correct?
Well, it's partly because of the state test, but it's also part of our graduation rate, which includes all students graduating, both students who take Regents and students who do not take Regents. So, yes, it is partly due to state testing, and it is also partly due to the participation rate in state testing, because the state requires that every district assess 95% of their students in ELA and math. And if we don't assess 95% of the students, then we can't meet our targets. They will not give us credit. We could have a 100% passing rate with those students that took the test, but if we're not testing 95%, we will never get off the focus list until we meet all three criteria: graduation rate, increase in meeting student targets, and not only increasing, but increasing enough, and I lost track. And then also the success rate, graduation rate, and testing 95%.
Okay. In that case, with that explanation, we move the teachers from one to the other one. We're going to make the people or the students or the parents to take the test?
The community needs to come together and decide. It is, it is a student refusal, but it is, a parent through discussion with a parent and their child about taking tests. And so as a community, we need to decide, is it important for us to get off the focus list? And if it is important, then we need to change our behavior.
Because in my opinion, the students and the parents are not getting enough information. They are taking the changes in teachers as the main reason to come out from focus school. And if this one is not the main reason, we need to get some more information outside.
Right, I agree. We did have a forum this year, and about 125 people did attend that forum, where we did explain some of that information. But I agree with you. I think that every parent needs to understand how we are held accountable and what are the consequences of that accountability system.
But these accountability systems have been in place for a couple of years now. That's not new this year, correct? The 95%, you mean the AYP for the district, they've been in place for a couple of years now.
Yes.
That's not a new change.
That's correct. What has changed is the test. The test has changed. And, everybody has an opinion about the Common Core. And I think that the test refusal is in relationship to the Common Core. And there's actually three big pieces. There's the Common Core, there's the assessment, there's accountability. And assessments from an educator point of view, and I'm not talking about state testing, but there's nothing wrong with assessing students. We're all assessed. We're all held to accountability. When we go in the world of work, when we go to college, we're all held to some kind of test. And so understanding standards is important. And so there could be different tests. There could be different tests connected to the Common Core, connected to the standards, etc. But I think that the protest is really around the connection to the Common Core.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions regarding tonight's presentation? Are you complete, Brooke?
I am.
We have a motion for executive session.
Motion to adjourn to executive session to review the employment history of a particular individual.